It was really Europe of dynasties, and people were loyal to their rulers, to their kingdom rather than to nation. Ottoman Empire was involved indirectly. There was one of the allies of the Czech Protestants. It was bigger than the today Czech Republic. So it was the so-called Bohemian states. So Bohemia, Moravia, and there was also Silesia. Germany didn't exist until almost end of the 19th century. On the other hand, looking back, was it worth for the Protestants to start the war and lose?
But nowadays, Czech Republic is more Catholic than Protestant, or?
This is also very interesting.
¿Qué sucedió en la Guerra de los 30 años? ¿Fue una guerra civil? ¿Qué fue la defenestración de Praga? ¿Qué eran Bohemia, Moravia y Silesia? ¿Cuál es la historia de la República Checa? ¿Qué implicación tuvo España en esta guerra? Hoy, la historiadora checa Jitka Emšová nos trasladará la visión desde la parte este de Europa del conflicto que asoló el continente en el siglo XVII. Un tercio de la población del Sacro Imperio Romano murió en estos 30 años. La primera Unión Europea en Westfalia para evitar la autodestrucción.
And it was 1624, all Protestants in the Bohemian part had to leave or become Catholic.
Bueno, este es un pequeño inciso antes de que vean la entrevista y vean que aparezco con unas gafas de sol, que sepan que no es nada premeditado para nada. Esta entrevista ha sido grabada en el House of European History, un museo que hay aquí en Bruselas, y la exposición temporal es sobre la guerra de los 30 años. Pero bueno, que estaba tantas cosas, me enseñó la entrevistada de hoy en la exposición, me estuvo hablando de esta guerra y bueno, que estaba tantas cosas que cuando que ponía la cámara, ponía los micrófonos, se me olvidó quitar las gafas y por eso van a ver que tengo las gafas durante la entrevista. Y bueno, ya que estoy aquí empezado en el vídeo, simplemente dar las gracias a Francisco Gutiérrez y a Miguel Talavera por ser miembros de pago en Patreon, la verdad que lo agradezco siempre mucho. Y ahora sí que sí, yo me voy a apartar de aquí y les voy a dejar con esta entrevista que creo que les va a resultar muy interesante. Bienvenidos un día más a Trincheras Ocultas, bienvenidos a un nuevo programa en el que nos volvemos a ver aquí todos juntos para hablar del siglo XVI y XVII y para entender mejor esta vez una nueva guerra y también tratar de entender desde otras perspectivas de historiadores europeos esto que estamos haciendo ahora mismo en Trincheras Ocultas, porque se van a quedar estupefactos cuando les diga que he conseguido la entrevista con la persona que ha ideado una exhibición sobre la guerra de los 30 años aquí en Bruselas. Ella es de la República Checa, antigua Bohemia, y vamos a tratar de conocer qué sucedió en estos 30 años, cuál pudo ser el papel de España y también esa propaganda que hubo entre católicos y protestantes. Todo esto lo vamos a conocer hoy con la profesora Jitka Emšová y esta entrevista va a ser conducida en inglés, así que sin ningún problema voy a cambiar ya al inglés. So thank you very much, Jitka. I want to say correctly your name. Thank you very much for giving me this pleasure here to interview you about the 30 Years' War.
You are very welcome.
So the first question, I think, like it's the simple one. How did the 30 Years' War begin? Why? Like if we need to find a reason why it began.
There were many tensions at the beginning of the 17th century across the Holy Roman Empire and Europe. There were a lot of countries that were afraid of the influence of the Habsburgs, because the Habsburgs, thanks to their marriage policy, became one of the most powerful rulers in Europe. This connection between Spain, Spanish Netherlands, and then the Austrian Habsburgs, and through them the Holy Roman Empire, was very unpleasant to other important countries in Europe, especially France and also England and many players in the Holy Roman Empire. They were not really happy seeing the driving force and the power of Habsburgs and the essays or the trials to force Catholic religion also in their countries. So they were afraid of the influence and also of the Catholicism. But as I explained during our walk through the exhibition, they were the official reasons were religious freedom. So this was the official reason why the war started. The Bohemian estates protested against the new Habsburg king, the Ferdinand II. He just became a new Bohemian king, and officially they really didn't like his Catholic policy. We wanted to start discriminating them. But many of them were also interested in more power, in more gain. So it's as always when a conflict like this starts. So.
And the religion, because maybe nowadays we cannot understand how important the relevance of the religion at that moment. It was crucial for this war. If you were Catholic or you were Protestant in the 30 Years' War, or it's not the main reason of this battle.
As I am saying, so the official reason was religion. So Swedish king, when he joined the war and invaded the Holy Roman Empire, he was depicted as seen as somebody who will save the Protestants in Europe. So it was the official version. But on the other hand, it was the French Cardinal Richelieu who invited him and who gave him a lot of money also during the years to come, that he stays and fights against the Habsburgs. So there the religion was not important at all.
So did they use some of the kings or the princes in the Protestantism world, the religion as a political weapon? Can we say to...
Sure, it was the official reason. Our values, our freedom, religious freedom. This was the official, also the Bohemian estates explained it like this, that they wrote after the defenestration in Prague, 1618, they wrote like a paper explaining to other Protestants why they had to stand up, why they started fighting. And of course, the official reason was the Protestantism.
Because now we have the Czech Republic, but at this moment, at that moment, sorry, it was Bohemia, which was the part of the nowadays Czech Republic in that period.
It was bigger than the today Czech Republic. So it was the so-called Bohemian states. So Bohemia, Moravia, and there was also Silesia and Lusania, which is today Saxony. It was actually this was the price for the war for the emperor when he wanted to make peace, 1635 peace with the Elector of Saxony. He gave this part to Saxony, so actually it became smaller during the 30 Years' War.
And because it's so interesting how in this war, or the 17th and 16th century, how if we look at the past, they weren't the nations as we know nowadays. They were different ones, and for example, it was like the dynamic of empires. But can we say that with the 30 Years' War, the consequences of this war, we can say that it was the beginning of a new concept of nation?
I think it's far too early. It was really Europe of dynasties, and people were loyal to their rulers, to their kingdom rather than to nation. So it's really like also in Bohemia there were many German-speaking people who were Protestants who were fighting together with the Protestants. So you cannot say it was Czechs against Germans at this time. Although in the 19th century it was reinterpreted like this. But it's too early to say that the nations are built. So the nations later use these stories for building of their nations. rather.
Me gustaría decirles que me ha abierto un Patreon, que es una página donde se puede donar 2 euros de manera voluntaria para que Trincheras Ocultas mejore audiovisualmente, ya sea para adquirir otro tipo de cámaras, más micrófonos, y todo esto ayudará a que Trincheras Ocultas no tenga tantos gastos como tengo, vamos, en este proyecto. Igualmente no es nada obligatorio, pero voy a dejarles por ahí el link de Patreon, de esa página, para todo aquel que quiera hacer una pequeña contribución voluntaria con 2 euros, por ejemplo. ¿Por qué España decide defender estos territorios?
Claro, lo primero es existir, es tener imagen, buena o mala, pero tener imagen.
Este imperio nunca ha sido germánico, porque esto en su momento dado era como el Washington de la época.
No fue una guerra contra España, no. Fue una guerra civil.
We in Ireland owe a huge cultural debt of gratitude to the state.
La persona clave fue Guillermo de Orange.
Salamanca, lo que nos da es la fecha.
A ver, la leyenda negra, donde tienen más adeptos, es en España.
For example, we cannot talk about the Netherlands in that period, we cannot talk about Germany, for example, in that period.
Germany didn't exist until almost end of the 19th century, and indeed for them it was very much important whose religion, who is connected to whom, not always just through the religion, but usually yes, because the marriages were also, as I showed you in this interactive, show that they were marrying each other in order to strengthen their alliances.
It's interesting because I was in Austria last month and I interviewed an Austrian historian, Friedrich Edelmeier, and he told me that the concept of Holy Roman Empire, in Spain we say Germanic Holy Roman Empire. So I want to know, like, because for him, in that period, nobody said Germanic Holy Roman Empire, but because of the propaganda in the 19th century, the German nationalism created this term, and now we are using nowadays in Spain, for example, Germanic Holy Roman Empire and not Holy Roman Empire. I don't know, what do you think about it, if they use it in that moment, or what is your perspective? Maybe you have another perspective about it.
I can tell you the perspective of the Czech historians, or maybe Austrian as well. So it was always named the Holy Roman Empire, and the Bohemian king was always part of the Holy Roman Empire. It was one of the electors who elected the emperor. So it was never like in this issue of German or not German. It's really a story of the 19th century.
Okay. And how can, because we are focused on our YouTube channel to the Spanish history, which one was the role of Spain in this 30 years war? Maybe in the Battle of Nördlingen we can see it, but I don't know if we were like an important part of this war in the Catholic side, or we didn't have so much powerful in that moment in this 30 years war.
No, I think at this time it was the Spanish court who was, or that was the court that was giving the tone, not like later the French one. And as they were Spanish Habsburgs were relatives of the Austrian Habsburgs, they supported each other. They also, as I said, many of the future kings and emperors grew up on the Spanish court, so they were very much influenced by the Spanish culture, but also by the Catholicism there. So when coming back to Bohemia, that was rather balanced and so-called country of both nations. It created a problem. But during the 30 Years' War, Spanish were supporting financially. They were sending soldiers. They had a lot of like diplomats in Vienna that were involved in the warfare. Many battles, not just battle and Nördlingen, were decided or by Spanish soldiers or soldiers from southern Netherlands, from Wallonia, from Flanders. They were part in many battles. As I said, many of the soldiers. This makes this war actually very pan-European. This European encounter on the battlefield where they were people and mercenaries from whole Europe. So they were many Spanish soldiers, and also this Spanish military school was also, especially at the beginning, quite important for both parts actually, because they had the.
Can we say it was a civil war, or it's like too much?
When you look at it, definitely in the Holy Roman Empire or Bohemia, it was partially, especially at the beginning, because they were people of both nations fighting each other. So Bohemian soldiers were fighting in the imperial army, but also the Protestants who had to leave the country after 1624. They were fighting in the Saxonian army, in Swedish army, and in many local Protestant armies. So they were fighting against each other. So you find it definitely. And on the other hand, many mercenaries didn't care about religion. They just went there where they were paid. They changed sides quite easily. If they lost a battle, they just went to the army that won.
It was something usual.
Yeah, it was very usual. It was typical for this war. So, and it also shows how absurd this war was at the end. It was telling that you fight for religion and that you don't mind switching sides is very unusual. And there were also a couple of examples, not just of simple mercenaries, but also like important soldiers, those leading soldiers. So there was one of the Huguenots, French Huguenots, Raduy de Souche, who left France because he was Huguenot. He was fighting with the Swedish, and he ended up defending the imperial city of Brno against the Swedish. So he became part of the emperor's army.
Okay.
And he helped him a lot, actually. So there are many examples like this as well.
Bohemia didn't have fear about the Ottoman Empire because it was maybe a menace at that period. They have this civil war between Protestants and Catholics. They didn't think about, maybe the Ottoman Empire could come here to Europe and fight against the Holy Roman Empire and the Protestantism.
It was actually a period that Ottoman Empire was fighting somewhere else. They were fighting against Persia. But so it was relatively quiet on this battlefield. But Ottoman Empire was involved indirectly. There was one of the allies of the Czech Protestants, come from Gábor Bethlehem from Transylvania. He was actually he was under influence of the Ottoman Empire. So it happened, for example, early at the war. He invaded Bohemia, Moravia, and had an open way to Vienna. And Austrian diplomats went to Ottoman Empire and convinced the Sultan to stop him. So so these diplomatic roads were actually strong. So it was not just decided just on the battlefield. And one of this is one of the examples. So of course the Protestants were quite disappointed because this was their ally who just abandoned them because of the diplomatic decision in Istanbul.
And after the 30 Years' War, Bohemia and Moravia and Silesia, they became Protestants, or they continued as a Catholic state?
1620, after the battle on the White Mountain, was this moment the Emperor Ferdinand II cut the Majestat with the rights, giving rights to both of the religions, and he decided, or he made an edict that everybody who is not Catholic has to leave the country. And it was 1624, all Protestants in the Bohemian part had to leave or become Catholic. And a little bit later in Moravia as well. Silesia was different. There was more fights at this time. And it remained all the years partially also Protestant. But for this moments of Bohemia had to remain Catholic. Bohemia was, during the 30 years, was invaded many times by Swedish, by Saxony, by Denmark. So there were many moments when the Protestants came back and claimed back their houses, their churches, but then they were pushed again. So it was really like the 30 years was like a constant exchange. And what happened at the end of the war, people who lived there they didn't care anymore which soldiers come, if they are Protestant to save them or if they are Catholic, because everybody needed to eat and needed to loot. And Prague was also a different city, 1648 than 1618. So what happened when the last Swedish attack on Prague happened, 1648, people were defending, like heavily defending. They were really like fights for months. Then Peace of Westphalia was signed and the Swedish soldiers just packed the looted artworks and left. And the people in Bohemia, and especially people in Prague, were rewarded by the emperor, saying like, it is forbidden to remind them this awful rebellion again. So it is all forbidden, and I thank you and I reward you for this. And it was like, officially we are now Catholic and we are fine, and everybody at the end was happy that there is peace. And what happened afterwards, there was quite a radical recatholization. There was like also burning books and really forcing people to go to the church and controlling them if they do. So it was and also Bohemia today, Czech Republic is one of the most countries, you have a really big density of Baroque churches. So it was part of this program of recatholization, like this going to nice churches. And so historically, architecture, it's interesting. On the other hand, looking back, was it worse for the Protestants to start the war and lose? And was it worse for the Habsburgs to recatholize a really small piece of Europe when you look at it, for such a 30 years suffering? So they succeeded. They had like their Catholic kingdom, but was it really worth this all these 30 years of destruction?
That's a very good point. But nowadays, Czech Republic is more Catholic than Protestant, or?
This is also very interesting. Nowadays, Czech Republic is one of the most atheist countries ever. And one of the theories says it is because of this, that the people were forced so often to change their religion, that when in the 20th century communist regime started saying or forbidding to go to the church, most people just gave up. It was not that important for them like for Polish people. Many other communist countries don't have this. Okay. So this is one of the theories of the religionists that it's connected with this period.
I think we are learning a lot about the Czech Republic, and it's something that I wanted to do with this interview. And to finish the interview, it was the 30 Years' War. We can say it was one of the first war media because of the propaganda and everything. For example, in the 16th century in the Netherlands, in the Spanish Netherlands, they had a concept of Philip II, like in the north of the Netherlands, very bad. They thought that he was a devil, and it's the same about the Duke of Alva. And I think nowadays we can feel this black legend, we say black legend, because they used a lot this propaganda against the Spanish Catholic Empire to try to become independent. Nowadays, for example, in Czech Republic, you have this type of black legend with some country, maybe with Sweden. What do you think about Gustav? Or you don't think about the 16th century anymore, or the 17th century?
It might have been in the 17th century when the war stopped. So of course these Protestant leaders as Gustavus Adolphus were probably seen as evil. But we are back in the 19th century when the nation started to rebirth, and then the Czechoslovakia was created 1618. And it's actually the legend that we are Protestant country and we should support Protestantism against Catholicism. So it was like the important story, like the Battle of the White Mountain, and all the immigrants fighting for freedom became like part of the story of creating the nation and its own state. So it was also misused, especially the battle on the White Mountain. It was misused in 1945 after the Second World War, when there were this big transfer or like forced transfer of German population from Czechoslovakia. So it was like punishment for the battle on the White Mountain. But it was historically it was not true. The German-speaking people were fighting together with the Czech-speaking people because they were Protestants, or against them because they were Catholic. So I would even say nowadays it's not really something. It's not a really topic. It's not something that is come up in the discourse.
So thank you very much, Jirka, for this interview. If you want to give us like a final conclusion about this 30 years war, doing, for example, this exhibition, did you learn something new or something that you think maybe it could be interesting to share? Something that maybe from the Spanish point of view we don't know, or something like, do you think it could be really interesting?
I think it's always interesting to see the perspective of the others. So if you learn more about your Spanish perspective, it's nice to see also what did the Friedrich of Palatine, Bohemian Estates, or Swedish king were planning or were thinking when they joined the war, when the warfare happened. But I think the most important message for me of this exhibition generally is like to show this reality of the war that happened long time ago. So I think this is the advantage, that people can sit and talk more without that many emotions, like if it's a war that happened recently. And also to dismantle or to look at the reality of the war. That was the official part and that was the reality part. So that many people got wealthy also through the artwork. So this was for me a very new part, this role of the artworks during the 30 Years War, and how it was desired, looted part, and also how it documented the war and the events of the 30 Years War. This, I think, is it makes this exhibition quite special, I think.
So thank you very much, Jirka, for this interview. I will finish here the video. Muchísimas gracias por haber estado hasta el final. Espero que les haya gustado esta perspectiva nueva, aprendiendo un poco también de lo que fue Bohemia, Moravia, también un poco Silesia, que realmente, como estamos en España, no sabemos qué pasaba por esos lados, por esos lares de Europa, y yo creo que es muy interesante conocer mejor ese siglo XVII, que tiene conexiones con el siglo XVI, y poder aprender aquí todos juntos en Trincheras Ocultas. Muchísimas gracias, no olviden dejar su me gusta, comentar ahí abajo qué les ha parecido la entrevista, y nosotros nos vemos en el próximo vídeo.